All right. Consistency.
Okay. So this discussion is bred out of multiple discussions that I've had with people, right? Starting something, and as they start and they progress into what they want to do, is life happens. Right, and life happens to all of us. So, I start a diet, but then I have a death in the family, my daughter's getting married, I have a birth coming along, whatever it is. But generally what happens is consistency, nothing eats consistency as much, right, as a change in the flow.
Yeah.
Right, the minute, because consistency kind of rivals in. You have a military background. It kind of rivals in with that day to day. That's exactly the same, right? My day to day routine never changes, and as long as that routine doesn't change, my consistency remains consistent, right?
Yeah.
Because they kind of go together.
It's disruption that kills you.
Right, but let's be realistic. When we're talking about your day-to-day, yes, we have a general flow. We go to bed this time, we wake up this time. But now what happens when that's thrown out of whack? What happens when it's the same reason people start a New Year's resolution and they throw out? Because they start the resolution and everything's fine for however long the consistency and the daily routine remain in sync.
Yep.
As long as those two are in sync, they're good. And then someone has a birthday, or my buddy's going out drinking, or my mom's having an event and I've got to travel, or I've got to go across the country for work, whatever. And the minute that consistency is broken, then what happens is, what seeps in is the ideas that, what?
Not today, tomorrow.
It doesn't have to today. So tomorrow's coming, and what? I'm going to go away anyway. So there's going to be cake. So I'm going to have cake this weekend, and then you're fucked.
I think it's even as simple as a job call-in. Like I think of people in general that I know, like, I'm motivated and I'm driven in the beginning. Like, New Year's resolutions, let's use that as an example.
Yeah.
Well, last year, I think New Year's was like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So people were like, I'll kick it to the next week. You get called in for work. You get a kid that gets sick. You get pulled back. Something changes, and then it gets thrown off the table.
And the other thing is, what'll happen is you'll have people who will justify that change in your routine justifies as changes. That's what I call bullshit.
Yeah.
Because what happens is when you justify a change, it means that you're losing discipline.
Yeah.
You should be adaptable in what you want to do consistently, right? That means that you should always expect things will never remain the same. However, as they're adapting, how do I adapt to the situation? If I'm traveling, what do I eat?
You brought up a word there. I want to ask you a question. You've known me long enough. Would you say that I'm a disciplined person? You can be honest.
You are disciplined, but you're
simple yes or no.
It's not a simple yes or no.
Okay.
Let me explain why. Right, because discipline depends on the perspective, right? And we spoke about this last week. We did an exercise.
Before you get too far away from it, the reason I want a simple yes or no is because I don't consider myself to be disciplined. I've struggled with discipline for a long time.
But here's the thing. That's why perspective is important. And I'm going to explain this in detail, and then tell me your thoughts at the end, right? So we had a BNI education moment last week, right? I brought in a roll of toilet paper.
Yeah.
The idea being is, if you apply that roll of toilet paper to anything in life that requires consistency, right? So roll of toilet paper is nice and big. Example. You pull one piece of paper off, no change. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, no change. The toilet paper looks exactly the same. But eventually, as you kind of roll and keep taking them off, and you're consistent with it, and you keep doing it, eventually it's going to get smaller, and eventually it's going to get down to the roll. Now, that applies to everything that requires consistency.
Right.
But here's the kicker when I talk about perspective. I know a lot of people in my life, right, that I've known past and present, and that I'm probably going to meet in the future, who are, by the perspective of people from the outside, super disciplined, right? Why? Because they're in phenomenal shape. They're always in phenomenal shape. They go to gym 5-6 times a week. They from that perspective to that person, that is a disciplined person. And here's the kicker. Consistency in something that you find pleasurable, that you find gratification out of, something that you get endorphin drives from, that's piss. That's easy. That's the easy part, right? So we sometimes assume that we'll see someone, right, Kevin, who does cardio every morning, preps his food on a Friday, is 95% on point, and the 5% is what he's allowed to do outside. Goes to gym 4 or 5 days, mostly 6 days a week, right? 1 day off, right? And out of all that, from a perspective of someone from the outside, they're going to look at you and go, wow, Kevin's super disciplined. But then let's change the scenario, right? We spoke about this before. I give you 1,000 cold calls.
Fucking hate cold calling.
Right. Now all of a sudden,
but I hate it.
But here's the thing: is now all of a sudden you're not disciplined anymore. Now all of a sudden, if I just judged you,
I find every way to avoid
on your ability to cold call, now all of a sudden Kevin becomes the laziest motherfucker on earth from perspective view.
But you make that's a really good example. And here's what I was thinking about when you were kind of talking about this. Like I feel like a lot of athletes, military folks, even corporate people, you think you're disciplined because of the structured environment that you come from.
Yes.
And the reality is you're actually you're not as disciplined as you think you are. And what happens is like I could always execute the playbook handed to me.
Yeah.
And if I had a coach or a boss or someone standing over me saying, make those 1,000 cold calls, do your workouts, whatever it was, like they would prod you to do the things that you're supposed to do. That's easy. And in my mind, it made me think I was disciplined because I could follow the playbook that was being prescribed by the coach.
Not just prescribed, pushed.
Yeah, it was prescribed, pushed, held accountable to. So it gave me this false idea that I was actually disciplined.
Yes.
Then you go out and become an entrepreneur, and then you realize there is no playbook,
and it consistently changes.
And it's
never the same.
Even this morning, like I dealt with exactly that. I came in this morning with the game plan of what I'm going to accomplish and do exact things that I needed to make happen.
And then you look at the
I get a phone call.
Yeah. One thing changes and your day changes.
100%.
So that's what I mean by perspective, right? So from someone's perspective who's judging you solely on the fact that you're disciplined, you get up in the morning. I mean, think of it this way: is anybody with kids, right? Whether they're young or just starting school, you're getting up early and you're doing some shit.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of it. Are you disciplined? Or are you just doing what you have to do?
No, you are disciplined to a certain degree.
Right. Okay, but discipline, the definition of discipline is doing something consistently that you don't like doing or don't necessarily have to do.
Yeah, so getting up to get your kids to school is something you have to do.
And this is the confusion that we have when we apply discipline, right? Because someone can look at Jason and go, Jason, you train 7 days a week, right? 6 days a week most of the time, 7 days a week every now and then. Okay. Wow, you're super disciplined. No, I just love the fucking gym.
I do too.
I like lifting weights. It's therapeutic. I love going. If I don't go, I feel like I want to rip a wall off. So am I disciplined, or am I consistently doing something I really like?
And I'm always asking you, like, hey, you resting tomorrow? Are you taking it off? And you're like, no, really, are you going to rest? Because if you go, I'm like, I want to go.
Yeah.
Because I like it. So it's fun.
And this is kind of where I'm getting at with consistency, because what happens is we apply consistency.
Right.
And applying consistency to those things we like doing, those things that have a reward mechanism that we've tuned into.
Yeah.
Those are not really, I wouldn't call them disciplined action, and that consistency isn't really difficult.
So an example of that would be like I talk about like the daily eat, like habits or tasks that you would implement in your life, and I think that's the key for anybody listening. Like the key to being successful and disciplined is creating these 8 to 10 daily habits. But they're things that aren't actually habits yet. You're trying to develop them into habits. So, for example, for me, a habit for a while was to follow a meal plan.
Yeah,
that was what I was trying to create. Well, now it's easy for me to do meal plans because it's second nature now. Because
you haven't really created a habit. A habit's a dirty word, right? Because a habit can be made and broken in a second.
Yeah.
I'd say that lifestyle changes when you ingrain something so deeply into your psyche that it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you have to think about it, it's a habit.
I should probably say task. So meaning like 8 to 10 daily tasks. So following a meal plan being one of them, and then it became that like just secondary nature.
So now is it a task? Or is it just what you do?
It's just what I do.
And that's the mindset change. And that's where people need to switch.
So now I replace it though with something else. Is what I'm getting at. So now it's ingrained in me. Yeah. It's a mindset that I don't necessarily need to work on that anymore. I mean, I still work on it. I make it a priority, but I can replace it with something else that needs to be a more disciplined item.
I think a more granular way to say is you never really replace it, and I'll tell you why. I
build on it.
No,
don't even build.
It runs like the stock market. It does this, right? Because what will happen is when I talk about being adaptable in consistency, right? When I talk about being adaptable in consistency on my personal level is there's been many times in my life where shit has hit the fan, and my consistency level, if I compare myself to prepping for a national bodybuilding contest versus I'm running into a brand new work, a job or task or project I have to fill in, right?
Yeah.
What happens is I'm still consistent to a level, but it changes. I'm adapting. Because what will happen is, if all of a sudden I've got to do 18-hour days of work, which happened when we did our land business, we were literally sitting in an office 6 days a week, 18 hours a day.
Wow.
Right.
You were wholesaling land, is that what it was? Yeah.
So, and that's what we had to do to get the job done, right? In that time, I still went to the gym. I still made time. It just wasn't the same level as if I'm prepping for a competition. Now, when I'm prepping for a competition, that consistency level is on a different level, because what takes priority is meals, right?
Let me ask you a question too. Do you get up consistently at the same time every single day?
Yes.
You do?
Yes. I'd say to the largest degree, and it depends on my sleep cycle, right? So what happens is, when I was younger, I hear people say, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. No, you won't. You're dead. You're not sleeping. You're dead, right? So I understand you want to tell me that you must make the most out of life. I understand the analogy. But if you don't sleep well, you're not a full person.
I agree.
Right? So depending on my sleep cycle.
How many hours of sleep do you get?
Right. I generally try and get at least 7.
Nice.
And this is why. Because anything under 7... I can work on 6, I can work on 5, but there's a diminishing return after around 2 weeks.
Yep.
Right. Also, I'm very much focused on how do I breathe while I sleep. Right. How's my oxygenation of my blood? Am I getting enough oxygen in? How do I feel when I wake up? Right. How much deep sleep am I getting during that cycle? And when I see the ranges, you see the differences. Now, if I find I've gone through a certain point where I'm not getting that return, I'll change my cycle around. Instead of going to bed at that set time, which is normal, I'd stay up an extra hour. I try and kind of mess the cycle up to see if it'll adjust how my body works. But generally, I'd say to the 99th percentile, right? It's 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep per night.
Yeah.
It's going to bed at a set time, which is generally around 10 p.m.
Yeah, same.
It's getting up at around 5:30 a.m.
Same.
Right?
Same.
And that cycle works for me.
Same.
Right.
Every day of the week. Yeah, me too.
I've adjusted the cycle at times where I've gotten out. There's times where I went to bed at 8, 9 p.m. I got up at 3 a.m. Right. And the cycle kind of works. But again, you need to be adaptable to what is actually happening in front of you. I travel once a month. I have to go up to Canada. Right. When I go there I don't have the ability to cook the same way at home. I don't have the same ability to go to the gym the same way as I do when I'm working from home. So I have to change and adapt how I work, which means that most of my meals are going to be outsourced. So I'm going to have to go to a restaurant. So I'm going to be picky about where I eat, what do I order, how do I keep it in check. And I've got to work that week out so I get enough. How do I adapt my training programs? What if I get to a gym, because I'm going to go to random gyms. I have a membership with Crunch, so I can train in any gym in North America. I go to a Crunch. I walk in there. They may not have the same equipment the next one has. So I have to be adaptable, not just on my eating cycle, not just on my sleep cycle.
Yeah.
When I'm there, I sleep differently. I'm not sleeping at home, so my sleep quality is less automatically. Yeah. The weather is different. There's less humidity. Yeah. All of these things factor in. So I've got to adapt my week to get the most.
These are all these disruptions that interrupt consistency.
And once you start looking at disruptions not as a disruption of flow, but a natural occurring part of the flow, then you realize that your adaptation is what really is going to that's where consistency actually works. Right. When you're consistent and everything's exactly the same and your day flows the same and everything's set in the same way, right? That can be very beneficial until something goes wrong. Yeah. You have to set up consistency in the way that you can be adaptable to any changes in your environment, but still maintain a certain level in regards to managing what your goal outsets want to be. So if I want to say I want to get at least this many workouts in a week, I want to make sure my diet is up to this scratch. That can vary. All of a sudden, if you're thrown into a situation, you have 3 kids, right? Now all of a sudden you're thrown into a situation where you've got to pump yourself into a job, right? Or into a project or into whatever's happening in your life. And it takes time away from everything else. What you're going to do is you're going to adapt how you do all of that to get the most out of your benefit. It doesn't mean that you're optimal, right? You won't be optimal, but your adaptation means that you don't fall off the wagon. Because what happens is when these changes and variants happen within our lives, what most people do is they throw the wagon away. They don't even just fall off it, they just dump it.
Yeah.
And they go back to old habits. And the old habit says, well, this happened in my life, so I'm going to have a Coca-Cola today and have some sugar, right? Because it's going to make me feel better. And you think it will, but what happens is we're so easily twist ourselves back into those old habits. Even when you've developed a lifestyle, like the amount of guys I've spoken to who follow primarily a carnivore diet. Now, carnivore diets, if they work for you, are super beneficial.
Yeah.
But what happens is that guy will get to the one level, and something will change on his day, and he goes, you know what, this weekend I want to have a cheat meal, so I had bread. Right. And he's entitled to. Do you know how difficult it is to go on a long-term carnivore diet, eat that bread, and go back to it tomorrow? It's almost worse than starting over, because when you started, I had a goal in mind. Yeah. I was trying to achieve something, and you kind of build a lifestyle. Now what's happened is to a large degree, I've kind of attained the goal, and now I'm maintaining. Yeah. And now I'll break it. Now to recycle it back in the next day takes more discipline than starting the whole process.
Totally.
And those are the cycles you got to adapt for.
My mind goes to, I was going to show you this picture. This is from Publix this past weekend. Yeah. I was buying some meat and vegetables, and the guy in front of me, that's Coke. He had 3 cases of Coke and a whole boatload of junk food. Yep. And he was obese. And he looked at me, and he looked at what I had on the table. I didn't say anything. I'm not going to be rude to anybody. I'm not ever going to disrespect someone. But to your point about like the choices that we make, like everywhere we go, I think what happens is like it's honestly, and I've lived this to a certain degree, it's laziness on your choices, and you have this like you get like a day or two and you do good, and then you fall off the wagon, and then you beat yourself up, and you just forget, and you don't do it, whatever you choose not to do it. Yep. Versus trying to get back on the horse. But the reality is, like, that Coke or the piece of bread or whatever you chose to take is instant gratification, and eating and living a certain way to be healthy and well is not instant gratification.
It's short-term gains versus long-term gains.
Yeah.
So everything that's worthwhile doing in the long term requires short-term sacrifice over the long term. So I don't do that today, but over the long term, I'll get the benefits.
But that's why I struggle a little bit with like goal setting. Yeah. Like, I mean, that's something I'm still like navigating in my mid ages here, but like I struggle a little bit with goal setting, because I feel like a lot of it, and I've seen people that are close to me like living and going through this, where like a bodybuilding competition is an example of it. Like there's a goal, there's an end result there. Yes. And again, respecting that whole thing, I'm not like beating that up, but I think sometimes athletes, whether it's a bodybuilder or an athlete, like a baseball player, a football player, a basketball player, like and we've talked about this too, like we're training for something. It's an end result.
Everything is based on a goal. One specific goal. So
when you take that away from the individual, though, I think especially, and I experienced this as an athlete, there's military guys the same way. Military guys are training for PT test, mission ready, capable, whatever. And then that all goes away, and now it becomes, well, what is my purpose? Like, what am I getting up for? And so all this is intertwined, in my opinion, to consistency. Yes. It's that I like, if this is my end goal and result of where I'm trying to go, that phone that's right there, and I've got all these things that I do to get there. Okay, well, now I take this away, and I'm kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do? Why am I doing this?
From their perspective, you're taking away their purpose.
You're taking away purpose. Yes. So you're really trying to rewrap your brain around like, well, squatting heavy weight sucks, or running or lifting, whatever it is that you do to get there, it sucks, or picking pizza over something that's healthy, or tuna over whatever, it doesn't taste good. Like, I'm watching Sam right now, like prepping for her show. Her dinner is like 5 ounces of shrimp, some broccoli, and some avocado, and I'm like, God, that looks disgusting. She's doing
that
it.
Avocado is her, that's like giving her dessert. That little bit of fat that she's getting is like a dessert to it.
But the idea is that, like, for you to make the conscious choices, and she's a generally healthy eater anyway, but like to eat healthy and be consistent but not get an instant result to it, it's very taxing mentally. And that's what I'm getting to, is like, you just have to you have to realize that it's a lifestyle that you're changing, and it's a choice that you're making to be healthy as a whole. Yes. And there's not necessarily an end result. It's just it's a process and a journey to enjoy.
But also listen how you broke it down, right? Is you're talking about high performance, right? high performance outcomes, right? If you're a Navy SEAL prepping for, to be deployed and go out to do a specific mission, that mission capability is high performance, right? Yeah. If you're prepping, Sam is now prepping for a bodybuilding contest, high performance. You're going, you're literally pushing your body to its utter limits to get a end result, right? What we're talking about is that type of consistency. I wouldn't say it's easy. That's a very big generalization. But I'd say because you have an end goal and you realize that what you're doing is high performance, your brain kicks into a different gear, right? If I know I'm a Navy SEAL and I'm going onto a mission, and this is my mission parameters, and this is what I do, I'm going to put everything in to make sure I meet those mission parameters, right? That's the same for a bodybuilding contest. Doesn't matter what you really apply it to, it's the same thing.
Right.
Now, take away, right, high level performance, because what happens is as you get older, and regardless of how we want to perceive ourselves, once you start getting over the age of, I'd say honestly past the age of 27, right, before 27, unless you're already a professional in a sport and you're kind of getting into that, by the time you hit 30, you're considered old school, right? You're considered a,
that's true.
You're
old for any sport at 30, really.
You know what I mean, right? That's kind of your end goal. Some sports earlier, some you can run longevity, and you get those exponential, Outliers.
Guys, the guy that just won the Arnold, Derek, what was his name? Derek Lumpsford, was it? I'm curious how old he is.
Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
He should be, I think he's 39 or 40.
Is he that old?
Yeah. And that's slightly different with bodybuilding. I'll explain why in a second. But generally I'd say with most high performance sports.
Guess again.
I actually have no idea how old it is. That was my guess.
That was a good guess. Right. 31.
Which, if you take the average, is actually really young for Mr. Olympia.
Is it?
Right, it really is.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive.
So,
anyway.
The guidelines that you look at here, right, is when you're a high performance athlete, that's only going to last you a certain period of time, right? Ronnie Coleman was at his peak in bodybuilding at 44. At his peak,
that's
right?
Crazy.
Jay Cutler recently turned 50, right, and he was at his peak at bodybuilding around 39, 40, right? So bodybuilding is different, because bodybuilding, you only hit that muscle maturity, and it's not as if you're required to go and take a hit. It's not like you're running into the field and there's people shooting at you, or you're on a field and people are tackling you. You can kind of control the outcome because it's based in the gym. Your diet, it's very controlled environment, right? So depending on your genetics, I have to believe
it still takes its toll though, because of the
because of what they have to go through. But the thing is that's an outlier in sports,
right?
Because again, if you want to consider it a sport, is bodybuilding sits on the outlier because it's something that you can do reasonably. You can do.
This is a question. You might know the answer. This isn't really on topic, but I noticed Jay Cutler at like 50, he still looks phenomenal, but his lats are nowhere near as big as they used to be. Why is that? He still looks great. He's shredded as can be, but his lats are nothing like they used to be. Why is that?
Here's multiple things, right? So you're looking at an athlete and comparing him to the highest level of performance that he's ever attained to.
Yeah.
Right. It's like give me a great baseball player.
Barry Bonds.
Right. Barry Bonds at his peak, right? It's like me comparing him at his peak to when he's 40. He's now retired. He doesn't do baseball. He doesn't train every day, right? He's still in phenomenal shape.
He's still very good.
He looks great, right? But it's not the same guy.
Actually, I saw a video of a guy, Will Clark, a Hall of Fame baseball player at like 60 years old, can still hit.
So
it's crazy.
When you're specifically talking about Jay Cutler, there's multiple factors. One, while he was competing for the Mr. Olympia, he was on a ton of performance enhancing drugs. Not performance. I move away from performance enhancing. When it comes to bodybuilding, I'd say aesthetic enhancing. Right. Two, his diet. He was probably eating way more food than he does now.
I heard him say he spent $50,000 a year on food.
Yeah, and I believe that 100%. Right, because of the size. Jay Cutler was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So if you take all of those things into account, you're comparing someone at his absolute peak.
Yeah, that's fair.
To now when he's retired, he's kind of, and he still looks phenomenal. Like, make no mistake, he looks great.
He really
but
does.
He's not competing.
Right.
Right. It's the same thing. That's the difference that I'm talking about. High performance versus everyday life. Jay Cutler. He's not going to get on Olympia stage, right? And if he did, he wouldn't place.
Right.
However, compared to every other 50-year-old, you walk down the street and go, "Oh my God, look at that guy!" You wouldn't know who he is, and you go, "Wow, he looks amazing."
Right.
His lifestyle choices and his consistency has changed because his performance outcome is different. He's got enough experience to know how to manipulate his body for what he wants.
Right.
But he also knows that he's not competing in a Miss Olympia. He doesn't have to put his body through that. Now he's also trying to make sure he strives for longevity.
So that kind of ties just into the thing today. Like, okay, so here's this elite, bodybuilder that now doesn't necessarily have that purpose anymore.
Yes.
But he still does it.
And funny enough is, go have a look at how many bodybuilders, right, who retired, how many of them just
don't look like they ever did anyway. Yeah.
And the thing I kind of attain that back to is, I went through this metamorphosis, right? It was, why do I train? Mm-hmm. And I had to, through hypnosis and kind of really doing a little bit of self-reflection, I had to really go to is, why do you do this? Because when I started doing this, there was multiple reasons. I wanted to look a certain way. There was a lot of reasons I wanted to do it, but those reasons aren't the same as the reasons today. And then they weren't the same 5 years in. They weren't the same 10 years in.
Didn't you tell me, like, originally you were a small kid, and part of the reason you trained was to become bigger, so you weren't necessarily
when I originally went to gym, right, is I always wanted to go because Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, those were always looks, and I always wanted to attain that, right? But besides that, when I actually walked into the gym, I wanted to get big for rugby. That was my goal. My goal was I wanted to pack on mass so I could play better rugby.
Right.
And funny enough is, rugby didn't really equate into my life's purpose. It's just, at that time, I was just obsessed with rugby, right? Yeah. As a kid. But everything changed. Right. And then as I progressed and I did different sports, whether I went into the entertainment industry, I did pro wrestling, purpose is different. Bodybuilding, strongman, powerlifting, all of them different. What I really realized through that, as I was doing my self-reflection of trying to figure out, why do you do this? What I realized is, one, it made me feel great.
Yeah.
I love the feeling. Two, I get to challenge myself with no one else judging or telling me what or where to do. It's just me.
Right.
I'm the only purpose here. If yesterday I couldn't pick this cup up and today I can, I don't need a trophy for that. I know what I did.
Yeah.
So it gives me a personal goal that I can attain to, that you realize never changes and never dissipates.
Right.
I can go into the gym today and go, and there's certain things I'll do today that I do way more efficiently than I did when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I have more muscle maturity. I'm smarter. I know how to do it. There's things that I could lift in my 20s that I won't even attempt to lift now.
Yeah.
Here's the point, but I don't judge myself as if I was 20. So what I find a lot of times is, whether it's a professional sport like baseball, whether it's a professional sport like bodybuilding, or whether it's just amateurs, what we tend to do is we try and compare ourselves to when we were younger.
Yeah,
we're at our peak in that, and then we say, well, if I'm not that right now, then there's no point, and then we just stop.
I live this, like, I remember, so going to the corporate space, getting out of shape, we had kids too, that factors into, like, the small kids, and you made excuses why you didn't work out and train, and then when you try to get back into shape, like, it hurt because you hadn't done things in a while, and it was not fun. And I would always, it took me a minute to stop comparing myself of the past, because I'd always think about and remember what I used to do.
Yes.
And Sam actually made a point of this not long ago, because of someone that we know that picked up and then stopped. She basically said, she's like, people see the way you and Jason look, but they don't see the work that has gone into that to get to where you are.
Especially the mental work.
Especially the mental work. Yeah, a huge aspect
mental work
of that.
I'll tell anybody listening, like, mental work is 90% of the problem here.
Yeah.
Because you, as men, you're consistently wrestling with yourself in regards to how you fit in with your personal person in your life, your wife, how you fit in with all other men around you in society. And I mean,
it's hard for men.
And the more access to information we have, the more our bubble of sphere of influence becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you fall into that line, as school kids, you would do this. You'd go into a schoolyard, you'd start comparing yourself to that kid. He's a little bit older, that's the same, and you'd kind of find your place. And that's a schoolyard. That's maybe a couple of hundred kids. Now what happens is, our schoolyard is the entire internet, everything we're exposed to. Now all of a sudden there's billions and billions of people and influencers coming in, half of which is bullshit.
Right.
If you see the amount of fake weights that go in on influencers, there's literally a warehouse you can buy fake weights from.
Can you really?
I watched a clip the other day. The guy throws him a 50-pound dumbbell and he catches it like this.
Some of those are funny.
Because realistically, is what they're doing is they're influencing, and influence doesn't mean they're honest. Don't put influence and honest in the same thing. They're influencing.
All right.
right? And they're going to do it like any advertising market would, any way I can.
It's true.
So now you have this giant sphere, right? And I actually said this to someone I met this morning. It's like the problem is the big dick syndrome that men have, right? Is I'm always considering now I'm going to say this and just listen to how stupid this is. I'm considering how big my dick is to every other man's dick that I will never see and never compare to. So I feel better about myself. How fucking stupid is that?
It's pointless.
It's pointless, right? Because in the end of the day is no one's going to see my dick except my wife. No other guy, especially no other fucking dude's going to see my dick. So why am I comparing my dick to everyone else's dick?
It doesn't matter.
Right? My wife is the person in my life. Why am I worried about what everyone else's dick size is? How's that different to going to the gym?
Yeah, it's not.
Because we do the same thing. We go to the gym, right? And you walk in and you see that guy over there, like, you know, I can size up to him, and or I can size up to that guy over there. And you run through this entire process of thinking that I need to size up to these guys. No, you don't. Your goal is to go in there and do the best you can.
Totally.
Once you let go of that ego and you kind of just suck it up and go, you know what, this is not what we should be doing. And you realize that what you're there for is to get the most out of that workout, to get those endorphins pumping, to get your heart pumping, to feel your lungs burn, and get that freedom that you get from that. From pushing yourself to the point that you go, wow, I managed to push myself that far. And next week you may push a little bit less because it was a tough week and it was a lot of work. The week after that you may push harder. PRs don't come as fast as they used to because we're older. But the point being is PRs, I don't measure them by how much weight I lifted or how many reps I measure them by how I feel. I can go to the gym and probably do less than I did ever before and walk and go, wow, I did it slightly differently, or I pushed myself past a certain limit. Consistency in my mind is about applying yourself in those scenarios every single day, not for what I'm going to be tomorrow or what I'm going to be, what I was yesterday, or comparing myself to other people. About when you walk out and go, what did I do with my 24 hours today? What am I doing with my 24 hours right now? And it's not just in the gym. How do I treat people? How do I engage with people? Do I look people in the eye? Do I smile at them? Am I trying to be the best version of a human being I can possibly be? And if I'm doing that, how do I want to feel about it? Well, you should feel pretty damn good. And that applies to the gym too. When I walk into the gym, I don't go in there. We've done thousands of workouts together. I don't plan my workouts. I know what we're going to train today. And we're going to do legs. I don't know what we're going to do. Because when I walk in there, I never, ever, ever prepare a workout. My workouts are flat prepared when we walk in because I don't know what I'm walking into. I might walk in and there might be
especially if you go to a crunch that's busy.
There might be a whole bunch of guys from college who are busy doing a leg workout and they've got all the leg equipment. Great. I'm going to adapt. I'm going to go do something different. That's what I look for in consistency. Consistency is being able to adapt yourself regardless of what you want as an end goal. And here's the thing, it's not about a big goal set. Doing this. What's my goal? My goal is every day I want to use my body as much as I possibly can. I want to use my joints, my muscles in every way possible, depending on what that's, regardless of what that day is, right? I can't do chest every day, much I'd love to, I can't. In my case, I'd love to do legs every day, but I can't. So there'll be a set schedule for that. But when I get in there on that day, I'm going to make the most of that workout, no matter how tired I am, no matter how shit I feel. Because I know, regardless of how bad I feel, if I finish that workout, I'll feel better. The same thing goes when I walk to the fridge. If I go to the fridge, right, and the fridge is a bad example because we won't have this in the fridge, or if I go to the store, right, and I have the option of buying something healthy or buying something that's full of sugar that's going to make me feel really good right now. Right. Which one am I going to choose? Right. Experience tells me that I'm going to take the healthy option because I realize that healthy option is going to make me feel a certain way over the long term, versus the unhealthy option is, I feel great while I'm eating, it tastes like fucking magic. And then right afterwards I feel shit. And it's those comparisons you've got to put up. Those are the things you have to weigh up every day, and those decisions don't change, and they're not always easy. They're not always as easy as they were the day before, because your life isn't a cyclical thing that's always the same. Your emotions change. Your lifestyle changes. Things change within your day that can alter that decision, and it's sticking to them that makes the difference.
I was going to say, when it comes to what you choose in a store, so when you have a refeed and you have your dessert that goes with that, there's a whole lot. It's a way different feeling that when you have that planned refeed and eat it at that time, versus if you go off plan and cheat, if you will, when you weren't supposed to. You feel guilt almost, and so the reward system is way different, and following a plan makes a huge difference. And you said a lot there that's like when it comes to I think for me, thinking on my journey and like how going to corporate caused me to like really fall off the horse when it came to fitness and wellness, and getting back in line. And anybody that's listening, that, and we have plenty of conversations with people that are struggling to get back on the horse.
Yeah,
you gotta look where you want to go, but you got to remember you got to start somewhere.
And you also have to, sorry to interrupt there, but you have to, where you're starting, you have to look at yourself. Don't beat yourself up.
That's right.
Right. You have to look at yourself and go, you know what, I'm good. All of us go up.
Which is what I was ultimately saying. Like where I started, I grabbed a 20-pound vest and started walking and struggled to make 20 minutes.
Yeah. But let's also roll back then. You were in a very different place mentally to where you are now.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Imagine you were in the same mental place you are now, where you were okay with the person you are, regardless of how you look. Muscles don't last forever, right? Stamina doesn't last forever. Speed doesn't last forever. These workouts, as we're doing them, I appreciate them every single day because they're not going to be the same in 10 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, and I realize that, so I take what I can out of it, but you're no less of a person if you don't have those things.
Yeah.
As long as you're always working to be better, that's great. But imagine your mental state was the same as it is now when you started. How much better would you be?
Yeah, a lot better. I mean, I will say, like, the hard part for me when I was, like, getting back started, I was mentally broken in so many ways, but I couldn't put my finger on why and where it was and what was causing it, where the breakdowns were. I knew something was wrong. And, you know, I think this is probably a segue even into, like, some of the direction we want to take the podcast in general with mental wellness, but, like, that was something for me. Like I knew something was wrong. I knew something was off, and ultimately dumbbells cured me, if you will. Like it started the cure. I wouldn't say it cured me. It was a beginning.
It was a start point. Exactly that. It was the start of the cure because it's very easy for
not cured.
No one. You'll never be cured.
Never. Right.
Life is an ongoing process that never ends. Right. Well, you can't just. You don't wake up one day and go, I'm a good husband. I'm done now. No, you don't.
Never.
That's why the word diet is such a bullshit term. Is because what will happen is I'm going on a diet. That means that it ends. It starts with the word die. Right.
I hate that.
You're literally and what happens to most people? I'm gonna start this diet. Great. You lose 30 pounds. I feel great about myself. Then I just go back to normal.
Yeah.
What you perceive to be normal. You haven't really changed anything. All you've done is you've gone through this cyclical cycle that's going to really ugly repeat itself over and over again.
Right. And I think, like, I don't know, like my kids are a good example of like hoping to instill like certain key core fundamentals in them, being, you know, exercise and health being a big part of that. We're all going to hand our kids or next generation's baggage, but like trying to expose them to being able to cure it faster is important. I think for me personally, like if I could go back in time, and I actually made a story about this yesterday, like I'm like journaling, like, you know, the things that I would tell my 23-year-old self. Yeah. One of them was to address my mental wellness from the start. Because I think that's everybody. Yeah, because it, like, dude, it's hard. I mean, even just as a dad, like there's times where I react in certain ways. I'm like, fuck, why did I do that? Like, why did I act that way? And I apologize. I handle it.
But why do we do that? We do that because as men, right? Why is weight training specifically, right? Because it's the easiest, most accessible thing we all can do.
It is. It's a great outlet.
The reason it's such a good outlet is, one, from a mental aspect, you get to go throw things around that are really, it's like punching a wall. The only difference if I punch a wall, it could break my hand, right? Yeah. You're going to do something that is so extremely difficult of testing yourself that you're going to tax your nervous system in a positive way. Yeah. You're going to tax your muscle system. By the time you get out of that, you feel like that all frustration and rage is gone, right? There's a benefit to that, but the problem is you're not dealing with the underlying problem, which is mental wellness.
Right.
Now, I say that's a great starting point. Like if you feel out of shape and you feel like life's beating you up, and you can start a workout program, that's a good starting point. Yeah. For everybody. We start our programs, but like, get to the gym, start a diet. Yeah. Right? Start a nutrition program, start eating healthier, make good food choices, get yourself going.
Well, I know you recently had somebody give you feedback about the 30-day challenge episode we did. Like, and I always think we should create a 30-day challenge for a community. But anyway, you said to me when I did that, and I ended up, my 30-day challenge turned into like 43 days, but you told me from the start of that, once I do it, you're going to look back on it and go, how do I never do this before?
Yes.
And it's exactly what happened, right? And even now, where I like even what I eat for my daily meals, and I look back years ago and go,
how did I not do this?
Yeah, like how did I fall off? Like how did I not figure this out sooner?
Yeah.
And my story is my story, my mess is my mess. It's part of it. It's how it goes. But in the end, like, if you push yourself to do things and mentally deal with certain aspects of your life that are a struggle, like that, like the mental stuff, right? That's constant. It's ongoing. Like even just last night with my son and all the deep work that I've done on myself to try to have patience and be better and kind. I'm like, he needed a haircut in a bad way. I tried to get him in a couple of times. We were just too busy. And the timing didn't work out for us. I know how to cut hair. I've done it plenty of times, but I don't like to do it because he squiggles and squirms and sweats, and it's hard to do for me. So anyway, I was like, dude, I got to give you a haircut. Let's get in the shower and do it. And he just kept like moving and being squiggly on me. And I'm like, bro, and I kind of got a little bit frustrated with him, but not too bad. And I moved him a certain way. And I was like, Brandon, stop it. And after I did it, I went, dude, I'm not trying to be mean to you. I just need you to hold still. And he's like, I know, Dad. Okay. But it's like I found the trigger. I saw the trigger coming.
And you dealt with it.
And I dealt with it before it got bad. And that's where...
You make a great point with everything you set up to this point, right? Is there's a flip side, though, right? Because the flip side in you finding a lifestyle choice that's really easy and once you get there, and I'll tell you, we can do this for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Once you go through the process and you get over the difficulties, get over your excuses, because most of us come with tons of excuses.
Yeah.
And you get over that, and now you get to the other side, and you've done this for that 30 days, and 30 days is a transformational period.
Yeah.
But now, once you've done the 30 days, you'll have what you have, which is the euphoria of looking back, go, wow, how did I not do this before? And you kind of feel stupid.
Well, you also look at it as like, I'm a completely different person today than I was a year ago, and a year before that, and a year before that.
But there's a flip side. There's a flip side to this. If you do not address, once you hit that point, if you do not address as what you've done, you start addressing your triggers, why you feel certain ways, why you react to situations certain ways, and if you don't deal with those mental wellness triggers after you've established that baseline, which is great, it's a good way to start. If you don't, that thing can flip on its head like this, because what happens is, and I'll give you an analogy, right? So 2015, 2014, I'm doing prepping for nationals in South Africa, right? It was a whole year's process, had gone through the state provincial championships, qualified for nationals coming up. We get to nationals. Now, by the time you get to nationals on that level, right, and it'll be the same for most people doing state or national level in the US. Once you get to that level, you've done about a year and a half's worth of prep. Not 6 months. Getting into the competition, getting on stage, that's a 3 to 4 month process. Getting to the competition, you've spent 2 years doing it.
Wow.
Right. So now you get there and you're sitting with all these guys. And there's this great bodybuilder in South Africa. His name is 50, Carlos Nunes. Amazing bodybuilder, short guy, but he's been consistent in bodybuilding, competing since he was 20, and I think he's in his 50s now. He looks phenomenal, right? Amazing human being. And he sat down with us, and we're busy eating. He was sitting backstage, and we're having our rice cakes and peanut butter, and we're eating, the food you've been eating for the last 6 months to a year, right? And he made this comment, and it stuck with me. And he said to me, "You know what's really weird about this?" He goes, "You sit here now, and you look at yourself, go, why don't I just always eat like this? Like if I just ate like this, I'll look like this, I'll look this all." He goes, and then 2 weeks from now, we're all going to be eating pizza, and that shit's gone, right? And that's what I'm talking about, because that's an extreme situation.
Right. You
cannot maintain for a long extended period of time that deficit diet. You'll have diminishing returns. Your body will give out, or something will give out, right? But what will happen is when you do a 30-day challenge and then you kind of reassess your lifestyle, if you don't deal with the mental wellness of how you got there, who you are, doing deep reflection of what are my triggers, how do I want to treat people, why do I get upset, why do I have these interactions that make me less of a good human being. It is what it does, right? When you don't do that concept you have right now, go, I don't know how I ever did that. We'll switch back into you eating pizza, drinking a beer, and then thinking of looking at that same plan you did and go, oh my God, how am I ever going to get back on this?
Yeah.
Because the mental wellness aspect of this is what actually really creates longevity. Is because you're going to have good days and you are going to have bad days.
Yes.
Right. You are going to lose people in your life. You're going to gain people in your life.
Yes.
You're going to lose in business. You're going to win in business.
Yeah.
You're going to have wins on days. You're going to have losses on days.
It's true.
Some are going to be worse than others. right? Health is not always going to be optimal, and you're going to have suboptimal health. You might get diagnosed with cancer. You might get diagnosed with different diseases, right? Now, what do? If your mental wellness isn't in the right spot, those dips in lifestyle is where consistency takes a second note. But if you are adaptable in your wellness and you have taken control of who you are and where you are in the world, and you are okay with living in the present moment, you'll sit down if you get a diagnosis of a bad ailment, you'll sit down, you'll look at the diagnosis and you'll go, okay, next step. And you'll implement it immediately because it's right there, present day. You're not worried about what's tomorrow. You're not worried about what's happened. You go, this has happened right now. What do I do now? And then what happens is adaptability means I'm going to maintain consistency in what I'm looking for longevity in life is I need to maintain my workouts. They probably won't be the same workouts. I'm probably going to have to change some diet. I might have to go on certain medicines. There's a range of things to do. But in that, you can adapt and still remain consistent in your lifestyle. That's the important.
So the diagnosis thing, there's a couple of things really quickly to go back to addressing like the losing of people. Sometimes like when you make these lifestyle choices and changes, you will in fact lose people. It sucks, but it's okay because you're ultimately bettering yourself, and if that person doesn't want to elevate to your level, so be it. You lose them
100%.
The other thing for me, a question, just a quick answer to this would be, if a doctor told you tomorrow, and you don't have to be the one to answer this, I'm just rhetorical. If a doctor told you tomorrow that if you don't work out, you will die, what would you do?
You're going to work out.
You're going to work out.
Of course you are.
Because you know that the way to live, the doctor says to you, the only way you can survive, the only way you can live is you have to follow a meal plan and you have to work out.
Yeah.
You would do it. Well, why does it take that to get you motivated in quotations, to do that? Because in the end, that it's fleeting. Motivation is fleeting unless it's catastrophic.
Yes.
And when it's catastrophic, it's not motivation anymore. It's like it's
survival mode.
It's survival. I have to do this. This is the only way I'm going to survive or live.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then take that off the table and realize just simply being motivated isn't enough.
It's not enough.
It's just not enough. And
it has its place. It's a starting point. It's a nice way to get into it. It's a nice way to drive you in, but it is not going to carry you the distance.
I literally remember distinctly having this conversation with someone just recently. Dude, you're motivated right now. Fuck motivation.
It's going to disappear.
It's going to go away. And guess what happened? The motivation went away. And you get punched in the mouth with job, life, kids, family, whatever's going on.
It's going to happen.
That motivation it's not there anymore. And the whole idea that I like behind challenges, and there's a lot that have done 75 hard. I've done 75 hard. It is a mindset challenge to help you understand this throughout the course of your day. You can do the food things. You can do the workout things. It
doesn't stop at 75.
Correct.
That's
it's a
just
daily,
establishing
it's just establishing a baseline, and it's every single day. You find a way to follow the meal plan. You find a way to eat the right things or work out. Like all those critical tasks that you need to make happen each and every day can happen. You just have to prioritize them.
Yes,
it's that simple.
It's and mental wellness and finding and working on your mental state is what's going to give you the most longevity.
Yeah,
right. Because the other stuff, in a short sense, are really easy. But once you can focus on that, and for me is if I can simplify this to the simplest terms, the minute you can start training your brain, right, your conscious, your subconscious, how you think, to stop living in the future, right, or living in the past, and only be in the present. Yeah. Right. It doesn't mean you don't focus on planning for the future. It doesn't mean you don't take lessons from the past. Right. So everybody, to me, this is the most simplistic way I can explain this. There's a lot more nuance to it. There's a very gray area, but in baseline is when you take yourself out of the past and you take yourself out of the future and you realize that those 2 points in time do not exist, right? It doesn't mean we don't plan for the future. It doesn't mean we don't take lessons from the past. It means I can only do what I can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. I might get hit by a bus outside. That's true. I don't know. But right now I can tell you in this moment I'm focused on this conversation, what we're doing, being present. Now, if I say be present in the gym, be present in the kitchen, be present with your spouse, be present with the person that's most important to your life, be present with your partners, be present with your business partners, be present with people, be present.
Don't for sure.
Be present. This is not present, right? So I learned this because half the things I do, owning a digital marketing company is online.
Right.
So But I realized that the most benefit I get is into action. And I heard I'm going to share this today. I was listening to Gary Brecker was on Joe Rogan, his recent podcast. And Gary Brecker, biohacker, this is a guy who spent years in the insurance industry who could predict the day you died. Mm-hmm. Right. And he's got some incredible metrics that he uses. And one of the metrics that he came up that he was talking about recently when I listened to it was that kind of stuck with me. He's talking about as you progress, right, and you're living your life, right, things are going to happen inside. Things are going to happen. They're inevitable, right? But as these things are happening, right, all you can do is you can make those changes on a day-to-day basis. And you can do that with as much data as you can comprehend. Mm-hmm. Now, we didn't have as much data on certain things 10 years ago. So that doesn't mean that 10 years ago you were messing around and you were stupid. It just meant that you were working with what you had at the time.
Yeah.
We're in a time now where there's way more data that is racking up. And one of those data points comes about isolation. Right. Now, when you think of isolation, think of elderly people or, your grandparents or your parents, and you put them in a home. What are you doing to them? You're isolating them. You're isolating them from purpose. You're isolating them from society. Right. Now, it doesn't just stop with them.
Yeah.
It happens to us. Right. If you stop interacting with people,
especially men.
Men especially. So what happens is we grab our phone and I'm texting buddies and I'm talking to people and I'm doing this, and this. Are you really, or are you isolated? Or are you in a bubble? You're in a bubble. You're not really interacting with the world.
Yeah, totally.
So what happens is on a psychological and hormonal level, what happens is you get isolation syndrome.
Yeah.
It halves your life expectancy. You can cut someone's life expectancy by half just by isolating them.
That's a good point. Like I saw a thing this morning that basically is like the nostalgia post on like the 90s, the way it used to be. Yep. But we didn't have cell phones back then. You had house lines. You would go to your friend's house, or you'd meet up in the parks, or whatever you did to like join and have camaraderie.
Yeah.
And today it's less. I mean, I think people still get together, but it's less likely that men, in my opinion, especially, you need good influence of other men around you. Like you need to be in person.
You need to really that community. Listen, online. There's lots of places for online. I think. Information, gaining perspectives. I mean, just the amount of information I can gather, like by listening to a podcast with Gary Brecker, right?
Yeah.
And hearing his insights and his interviews. And that goes for anyone I listen to. That's great. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you have to get that interpersonal reaction. Now, we can relate this back to community, but we can relate it back to business.
Yeah.
If you want to close a deal, do it in person. You can close the deal on the phone. I'm not saying doing it on the phone or doing it online is impossible. Of course you can. But I guarantee you, if you do it in person, your likelihood of closing is way more. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of shied away as a society, I try and do this. And you would have noticed being a very close friend of mine is I don't text you anymore, I call you. Yeah. Because I realized on text, like we're sending information, but if I call you now, I get to hear your voice, you get to hear mine, you hear what I'm actually saying.
Right.
We can interact. It doesn't matter if the phone call is 10 seconds. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it is.
Yeah, it's true.
That interaction with me is worth more than the text.
Yeah.
Right. If I can, I'm going to try and see you. I'm going to try and set up that one-to-one. I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to look you in the eyes. I'm going to sit and try and gather, because now we can share energy.
Human interaction.
Right. And what happens is there's an energy that you get from that, especially spending time with like-minded people that are trying to achieve the same thing. You get an energy from that, and you want to try and incorporate it as much as possible. Now, again, our community is just about to be launched, but you can't do that with everybody. But I suggest is when you do that, try and create micro communities. Right.
Yes.
We do that. We have our community that we go to the gym. We have people that we only see on a Saturday. They come train with us.
Yeah.
Right. We have people that we see in the gym that we interact with consistently, and we try and be more interactive with as many people within the group as possible.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do. You want to expand your range. We're part of a BNI group. Now, I'm not saying you should go spend the money on a BNI group. If that's within your wheelhouse, great. But there's lots of community and social interactions, and the gym is the freest, easiest one to do. Right? Cat Williams, they're going to be there. I'm going to be there. They know what I'm doing. I know what they're doing. Right. I know they're going to pitch up. They know I'm going to pitch up.
Yep.
That's a gym every single day. If you go to the gym the same day, if you are just a nice, friendly person, you will make friends. You'll, and these are, and when I say friends, you may never have dinner with the person. They may never see your house. They may not even know what your last name is or your first name is.
Right.
But they know you, and that you have an interaction. That interaction with a lot.
It is.
And I think that's more important. That sense of community, especially for men going to gym, you really need to build that.
And to tie this to the point of this podcast topic, when you see the same people at the gym, you're also creating some consistency there too. And just simply like coming in each and every time, you're just building upon, but it's consistent actions.
Yes.
And I think across the board, like, don't think like if you're somebody who's out of shape and not where you want to be, and you see what we do, and you're like, well, that's what I want. That's great to have that goal, but it didn't just start. Like, this is for your whole lifetime of training. This is me, like 2 years of consistency, get back into it. Just start. And then build upon those habits
and build upon
and consistent
be the
actions.
Best you can be.
Totally.
Right. Because it's good. Listen, looking at other people, whether it's within your community, online, you can look at a guy like The Rock and you can go, I want to achieve that goal. You're never going to look like The Rock.
Nope.
Right. You might look better than him. I'm not saying that you can't achieve more, but it's a stupid comparison because you're not him. He's who he is, right?
And he spends a lot of money reinvesting back into his business.
100%, right?
Himself.
Which is again all great and well, and you don't need to necessarily be a movie star to have that look, right? But it's attainable in your perspective and in your realm.
Yeah.
You don't have his genetics, right?
Yeah.
The guy's he's probably got the two genetics, the best genetic builds. He's African American Samoan, like two of the toughest, biggest people on earth, and he's got those two genetics melded together. Like he's a specimen of a man,
really
right?
is.
At 50 years old, he looks better than pretty much everybody.
He does.
Have a look at that and take from it and go, you know what, I'll take parts of what he does and try and apply it, but you have to apply it according to your wheelhouse.
Correct.
Your wheelhouse is not the same as everyone else's.
My dad has always said life is like a buffet. You don't go there and eat the whole thing. You pick and choose what you need.
Your dad's never been to a buffet with me.
Fair. You do some damage, but
the point being is find what works for you, apply it, switch it around a little bit, change things in, add this, add that, but don't lose sight of what your goal is. Don't get frustrated in the process, right? Don't keep, and why you will get frustrated is if you keep comparing yourself to other people. Have a goal. If you see someone that you want to attain to, and say, I want to look like that, I want to attain that look, that's fine.
I think
but be very careful.
The thing that I want to say, kind of closing up here, is like, as you're going through this journey of change, if your kids bring home a candy bar and you eat it, like, okay, you ate it, but the next time, like, get past that. Like, you can't just like throw the whole thing off because of one mess up. Like, you got to get back on the horse. You got to stay consistent. You're
going to fall off the horse every single day, 50 times a day. I do. I'm at no point are we sitting here saying we're perfect. Like, dude, I fall off the horse every single time. The difference is my ability to get back on the horse has exponentially gotten better.
You close the gap.
And how did I close the gap? By understanding my mental state.
Yeah, I forget. I just had this conversation with somebody and said the same exact thing. Like when you're not disciplined and you're not good with consistency, like your starting points from, when you fucked up till you started are very far in between.
Yeah.
When you get good with consistency, you get good with discipline,
you shorten the distance.
Yeah, you shorten the distance. And it becomes meal to meal. Like,
yes.
That's where I'm at. Like, if I have, like, Saturday is my day where I'll have a refeed.
Yeah.
Sometimes on Sunday, if the kids come home with something, like from my friends or whatever, like yesterday I had like a little Milky Way bar. I'm like, I haven't had one of those in forever.
But here's the thing, though.
I ate the Milky Way bar.
Your kid brought it on the Milky Way. How can you not have it?
It was delicious.
And that's the thing. Life is still life, right? I'm all for, guys. If you're the type of person that chicken and broccoli, that's what you eat 10 meals a day, and you're in the gym, great. That's your lifestyle. Is good, but everyone's lifestyle is different.
I know a guy that said he didn't have a single carbohydrate for 3 years when he played in the NFL. Yeah. That's amazing.
And that's good for him.
He showed for it. But
but again, carbohydrates is easy. You can work that into your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't want to work it into my lifestyle.
Right.
I like going with my wife and having an ice cream. Right. There's things I like doing with the most important person in my life.
Yeah.
Right. And as long as those fall within the 10% of ratio, right, and I like working at 10%. Why the hell not?
Definitely.
But in order to maintain and keep it at 10% and not let it become 15, 20, 30, 40, I have to ensure that my mental wellness is in a very good state.
Definitely.
So I put more effort
That's a
into
good
that.
point. We could go down a whole rabbit hole with that,
Yeah.
but we won't. But like, there are definitely people out there that have a struggle or an addiction around food that needs to be addressed, and that goes back to the mental state that needs to be identified and fixed and worked on.
So, you know, if you're starting something, to end this off, consistency is only as good as you are adaptable to it,
There you
because
go.
shit is going to change. As you're adaptable to that consistency, and you can shorten the gap, as you said, you know, you mess up, get back on the horse.
Yep.
Next one, let's go. Just keep doing that. You'll do it after real, and once it becomes second nature, it's no longer difficult to apply.
Yeah.
But in between those points is mental wellness.
Definitely.
How well do you perceive? Are you able to sit down? Do you get up in the morning and go, oh, it's another day? Or do you get up and go, it's a great day?
Yeah.
Right? If you're not doing that, fake it till you make it. Just start doing, and there's so many different tools out there. We'll list them on the community. There's breathing exercises you can do. There's grounding you can do. There's, you know, you can wake up, you can have coffee. Now, I apply some of these. Sometimes I don't do them every day. Right? When I feel like I need to, I'll go apply them. But there's different ways you can kind of establish
tools in your
baselines.
toolbox.
As you said, you can apply those things I do every day to adapt and make sure that I get the most out of being present in today, because that's all you have.
No doubt.
Right. So consistency, that's a great one.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.